Did the oldest take the youngest?
Yes, Maya took Willow to rugby.
Very
I
nice.
was gonna go and then force Maya to walk the dog, and she's like, fine. She was so tired, but she did make dinner, so that's good. Hopefully, a dog hasn't eaten it while I'm recording with you because everyone's left, so dinner is left unattended. But we shall see. But yeah, went to a party last night. Um,
That's right.
yeah, left after 10 minutes, and
Oh,
then
really?
yeah, and then sat in a car for an hour and a half talking with
To who?
with one of her friends and her
Oh,
boyfriend.
okay. Oh, okay.
I said, you guys could come back here. She's like, we did. I don't remember hearing them or hearing barking, but I was already in bed. So,
Mhm.
like, I went to bed when she left for the party. So,
Living your best life as a teenager.
she really is. And she's really loving that she's still only 17. So she doesn't have to feel like people have to go to Ranchman's. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I still can't believe that teenagers are going to Ranchman's.
Where else are they going to go, though?
I know. I feel so
It's
bad
not like
for
back.
them.
It's not like back in the day. There's no bar scene like back when we were degenerates.
I know. We had 17th Ave, we had Center Street, we had Electric Ave, like we
Yeah,
had
and
all of them.
all they
We
have
had,
now is they have microbreweries, and that's it. You're either going to go to the Canadian Brew House or you're going to go to a microbrewery and pay $13 for a crappy IPA. I wouldn't want to go drinking either if I was their age. It sucks.
well, and I think, I mean, a lot of it probably goes back to everything I've talked about just with screens and social media. Like they're just not hanging out anymore. So there's no need for pubs and bars and things like that. Like,
Mhm. Like
yeah, they're,
we went out because awful liquor was cheap.
yeah.
There was always the impending danger of interacting with someone and potentially getting into a bad situation or a fight. So there was a bit of an adrenaline rush, and then there was music. All things that if they want to sit around and listen to music, they can do it at home for free and do whatever they want in terms of hydration. So yeah, I can't say I blame them.
Yeah. Like every night I went out.
Mm-hmm.
Like Saturday was at the Taz, Sunday was Bermuda Triangle, Monday was usually the Den or some industry. Sunday and Monday were industry nights. So wherever we would go
Yeah,
for industry nights. Tuesday was the only night I'd stay home because that was Quantum Leap night. So I would stay home for
that
Quantum
is a
Leap.
dramatic 180 from the rest of your social life. Boozing
Yucatan.
6 out of 7 days a week, but I can't miss Sam jumping through time because I need to know if he's going to get home.
I loved it. And there wasn't really anything going on Tuesday nights, but Yucatan's was Wednesday and Thursday. That was the bar by the university, right? And then Friday, we're
Mm-hmm.
back down to either the Taz or along Electric Ave. I know everyone went to the Fox, but that wasn't my favorite place. Or Coconut Joe's, not my favorite place. I would go, but
The Fox is where you went if one of your buddies had to get into a fight with someone. That's you ended up at either the Fox up in the north or the Fox downtown, and guaranteed there was someone there that wanted to fight one of your buddies. That's what the Fox was. There was no other reason to go there. It sucked.
yeah. I always thought I've even been punched in the face. Actually, that was one of our, before we were dating, we weren't even friends, we weren't even talking, but I got punched in the face, had a bloody nose by a dude. I got punched in the face by dudes a lot when I was going to the bar. But anyway, punched in the face by a dude. I ran to you. I
Not just
remember.
so everybody. Yeah, I was just going to say, not this dude. Let's be real clear.
No,
Okay,
I don't know who it was.
good.
And ran to you, bloody nose, gave you a hug, and then I ran to the bathroom because you just stood there with your arms at your sides.
Do you have a quota for how often you have to tell this story? Because it seems to be a quarterly occurrence now.
I
Where
don't
you're like,
tell
I
that
got
story.
punched.
I don't tell that story, but I tell all the stories of how you ignored me. Like when I'm like, hey, my name's Caroline. Did you know we had the same birthday? And you looked at me and turned away. You were so mean to me. You were so mean. So I'm not telling that story. It's just
Oh
all of the
boy.
mean
I've
stories
I'm
that I have.
glad you've been able to make up for lost time and flip the tables on who's mean to who. Yeah,
Flip the
you and your
tables.
you and your two little cohorts, your two little weird roommates that like to gang up on me now. I think you've more than extracted your pound of flesh.
We're not legitimately mean. We tease you. We're not legitimately mean. How are we legitimately mean? I
I am
don't,
the ugliest, stupidest man walking the earth. If anybody of the three of you is polled, I'm just stating facts. Don't. This isn't a video podcast. Nobody can see your fake shock on your face right now.
it's
Put
not
it
fake
away.
shock.
Put it away.
I always defend you, how you're so cute. You're a cutie patootie.
Yeah, and then the girls will push back, and you'll make some underhanded comment. Yeah, but I'm paraphrasing here, but he's not. And I'm like, what? And then the conversation moves on, and you guys just are all giddy and laughing. That's all. All I'm saying is that it's 3-1 now, so you've more than adequately turned the tables on what I may or may not have been at 19. Don't
You
say
were, you were, yeah. All
you and
right.
your little posse, you and your little flock
Whatever. Let's get
of
this
of
show.
of Control C, Control V walking around the house because it is 3 Carolines. It is unbelievable how much they're like you, and that's not just making fun of me. It is crazy.
They don't see it. But now that I see Maya with her boyfriend, I'm like, oh my God, you're a little me. So I am a prankster. I love pulling pranks. Maya is my biggest
Victim. The word is victim.
victim who
Yep.
hates it. And she says I've
Yes.
traumatized her. She's got PTSD because of my pranks growing up. Well, boy, is she in it with, so she's got a boyfriend who's got a few fears. Guess he's scared of heights, for example, and she made him climb a tree and then was calling him a baby when the wind came up and he was freaking out and needed to get down.
Poor kid. He's a nice kid too. Like she's just terrorizing this poor guy.
She's terrorizing him and I love it. I'm like, you are my kid. He's scared of porcelain dolls, and guess who's got a porcelain doll collection? And guess who's gonna chat with his mom and get her to plant porcelain dolls strategically to scare him. So it's rubbing off. It's rubbing off. I love it. I love it.
This poor kid is just doesn't know what he's in for. Maybe he does know.
I'm glad that because we do tease. I mean, we're not mean to you, but we do a lot of teasing among all of us. And I'm glad that he can take that because I think that's an important part of Maya's relationships.
Yeah, if you can't stand up to her, then yeah, she's got no interest in chatting with you. And it's consistent with any of the people she's close to. Yeah. There is a constant stream of teasing, I'll call it.
Willow's friends are still developing their skin. I think that
yeah, they don't respond to it as well as others, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it'll come. Anyways, we should get on with our guest today. We're going to learn about toxins in our everyday lives.
We're talking about the kids. What's this guest going to tell us about?
So David, and I'm actually really excited to read his book. He's a best-selling author of Raising Healthy Kids, How to Protect Your Children from the Hidden Chemical Toxins in Our Everyday Lives. He's also the chief officer of the nation's most active consumer rights nonprofit, the Healthy Living Foundation. And so we're going to be talking about creating, I mean, it can't be toxic free, but just being aware of the toxins that we're bringing into our life. So that's kind of his area that he talks about. He does make some really good points in looking at, safe brands to buy. So in his book, he goes through some of the toxins to watch out for, the things that we can do, the action steps that we can take just to protect our families. So yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit. I think we're just going to scratch the surface here in today's episode, but it's a good reminder of things and good things to start talking about, making little tweaks in our day here and there.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm glad to be talking to you today.
Why don't we start out with you introducing yourself to everyone who's listening?
Oh, well, thank you. David Steinman, author of the new book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins, which has just come out from Skyhorse. And it represents the work I've been doing as a journalist and as a citizen enforcer and activist for several decades in uncovering companies that are hiding chemical toxins from us and using the legal system in the United States to make them share with consumers what we have a right to know.
Mm. Important topic. And I'm sure it's not just with toxins. I'm sure it's a lot of other things. Uh, I'm just thinking, I know we think about toxins and it's probably on the back of our mind, but I'm sure there's so much that we don't know or things that we don't even think about. So where do we start? I don't even know. Where should we start with this?
Well, I guess I guess that the issue of is it in the back of our minds or in the forefront? And I think that the awareness of the impact of chemical toxins has actually come in, at least in the United States, into every home. I think it's that people are starting to realize quite clearly the effect that chemicals in their environment are having on their health, whether they have a cancer themselves, a prostate cancer, breast cancer, whether they're having kids or contemplating having a family, whether they are maybe trying to have a family and can't quite seem to conceive. When you go into work and you're exposed to so many chemicals and you wonder why you have a headache sometimes. So I really do think that it's coming into everyone's home and into all of our lives. But, it's also a really young movement. Awareness of chemical toxins didn't even begin until Rachel Carson published Silent Spring in 1962. We didn't even have a language to express what we were going through. Words like part per billion, or endocrine disruption, or neurotoxic, carcinogen. These weren't even words that we even had access to. So the movement is so young. It's one of the youngest. But I think when people become aware of the power that they have in their shopping choices, not only to address their own health and their family health, but to actually make change faster than our public officials can through the legislative process, I think people start to realize, no, this is a big deal. It's not a small deal. And I really do need to be aware of it just to protect my family, if not to uh, improve my health and ensure a future for my family.
Mm-hmm.
So is this something that you would consider to be unique to the United States, or just an output of, we'll call it progress, but a global kind of awareness on the consumer side and potentially a focus on profits from the business side? Like, what, I guess, how widespread do you find this to be is a better way of asking it. And then ultimately, what is motivating it, right? What is driving both the corporate behavior in a way to try and that people need to be aware of?
The concerns are international. Throughout Europe and in the industrialized nations, our exposure to chemical toxins is increasing. And most nations don't have great labeling laws. It just so happens, though, as I've observed it, that I think the US, because of our lack of regulation and super consumerism, that we are probably being pound for pound being exposed to more nanoplastics and chemical toxins on a general basis than just about any population in the world. But that doesn't mean if you live in Australia or England that you're not suffering huge problems there too, because they're well documented. South Korea, some research has shown, for example, South Korean boys who are exposed to high levels of phthalates. When I say high levels, by the way, phthalate is a plasticizer used in cosmetics. When I say high levels, I mean high normal levels from everyday exposures, that they suffer higher rates of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They lose IQ points, 5 to 7 IQ points approximately. And researchers can see that portions of their cortical tissue just never developed. They're dead areas.
Wow.
So this is international. As to why it's happening, there's certainly a lot of greed involved in this. And but more to the point, it's a lack of regulation. Regulators throughout the world, but particularly in the US and Canada, have told citizens over and over again that a little bit of these poisons, a little bit of these forever chemicals, a little bit of these everywhere chemicals in our cosmetics, for example, they're not going to hurt anyone. And this is a blatant untruth. They could say that 50 years ago because there were no epidemiological studies. There were no case control studies. As I said, this is a young movement. They can't gaslight us anymore. So, Andrew, if you want to know why it's happening, corporations are naturally greedy. They're not human beings, as our former presidential candidate Mitt Romney said here in the US in 2012. They're made to profit, and they don't have a morality unless the people do. And that's why you have regulations that curb those excesses, and we haven't had them. That's why we have forever chemicals everywhere in Canada and throughout the US and elsewhere, because the regulations were so poor and never kept up with the technology.
Well, and it takes forever for research. I mean, my big thing that I try to speak up against is social media and kids, but things are changing all the time, and it takes on average 17 years for research to get out there to the general public, 85% of which goes into the garbage anyway, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that it takes a long time. And in that time, we've already been exposed to so much, and it becomes problematic. So all this to say, I mean, just for parents who are listening out there, what are some of the environmental exposures that we should really start to worry about?
Well, so I don't want this to turn into a worry fest.
Okay.
Because really, when I wrote Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins, you can get it at any bookstore, your independent bookseller, or Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But it's really a black belt course in protecting your family. Once you read it, and share stories from all over the country, all over North America. I share stories. And once you read it, you will be able to protect your family. So you don't have to think that things are unmanageable. In fact, what I'm calling on is for folks to be adults in the room, realize that, the so-called adults in our capitals are just not doing the job, or just not adequate, because we have to do it. We can do it through our choices when we're shopping. And the book is really a black belt course. So I'm going to give you some problems, but I'm also going to tell you there are solutions. Okay, so people don't have to freak out. But one of the biggest areas that we always start with is how you feed your kids and your family. And 20 years ago, most people didn't even know what organic foods were. There were no studies on organic foods, and there were really no official regulations governing organic foods. But I've looked at thousands of reports, both for conventionally sourced with pesticide-grown foods and organically grown foods. And clearly the organic foods, while not perfect, are so much less toxic. And this is important because I'm the chief officer for the Healthy Living Foundation, and we do a lot of consumer advocacy and testing. Every piece of bread we've ever tested has a nerve toxin in it, whether it's malathion, chlorpyrifos, diazinon, but all grains have these organophosphate pesticides that attack the body's ability to break down an enzyme called cholinesterase. As a result, the synapses, which are the little gaps between the nerves, get filled up with acetylcholine, which in massive exposures causes spastic motions, but in little doses causes little brain spasms, where our kids just don't think as well because they're damaged. So every grain product has these in it, and I'm not exaggerating about this. So the studies show that when you buy organic foods, and these are peer-reviewed published studies, that your child will have less obesity, less diabetes, lower risk for being born with birth defects, lower risk of cancer, will be lower risk of ADHD. Mom, when you have an organic diet during pregnancy, you will have less complications. And dad, if you're on an organic diet, you'll have a greater chance of having a family, because you will have healthier sperm than men who are eating conventionally sourced foods. So it's such a profound impact. And, I think also once you get people to start doing organic, their whole outlook starts to change. They start to become aware of other things in their lives, because that's a big, big commitment. Now, people may think, well, it's too expensive. Organics are too expensive, but that's old thinking. Because so many people over the last 20 years have been demanding safe food, it's a big movement. Without legislation, just by our market demand, we've created an organic market. And as a result, today, when you go shopping, you can find all the organic staples like potatoes, celery, lettuce, tomatoes, bread, as I mentioned. All of these will be priced at about the same as conventionally sourced foods. But you will find your child and your whole family are going to start to reflect the difference right away. Our bodies really do respond quickly. When you have fewer nerve toxins going into your child, whether it's the organophosphates in grains or the food dyes, if you bring home Jello, for instance, which I don't recommend, your child responds right away. Your family responds right away. Your partner does. So it's not more expensive, and organic foods are one of the big solutions to one of the big exposure problems we have, which are contaminated foods, foods that are grown with a lot of pesticides and fungicides.
That's a great, we used to be really good. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about the expenses. I actually just bought a big bag of carrots the other day. Organic was cheaper than the conventionally grown carrots. I couldn't believe it.
Thing.
Exactly. I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's of course. And you can go on Instacart, for example, or whatever online shopping service you use, and you can compare prices. Mm-hmm. And you can just Google organic, put organics into the search bar and see, well, who's got the best deal today on organic apples, for example. Or as I point out in Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins, suppose you want strawberries, your kids want strawberries, but fresh strawberries can be, whether they're organic or not, they can be very expensive. But you can buy these 3-pound bags of organic strawberries that your big box store sells, and they're even cheaper than the fresh strawberries. They last longer. You can get some non-fat yogurt for your kids, some unroasted nuts like almonds or walnuts, unroasted. Don't get roasted. Yeah. And start giving your kids really healthy snacks that are not only, it's not just that they're good for them, but you're going to make them stronger against the environment. Mm-hmm. I really mean it. You have to feed your body not only healthy foods. All strawberries contain vitamins like vitamin C, for example, and they're very healthy. Or blueberries contain proanthocyanidins, which you need for your eyesight and capillary health. And so they're good, inherently good, but they can also contain those nerve toxins or fungicides for a child, or if you're pregnant, are not good. So there's no reason now not to get the organic. All the ways of affording it on any budget are in my book. And it's so important.
Mm-hmm. And a body does react, like you said, very quickly. I can't remember if it's years ago that I was reading research just with smoking, and people who stopped smoking, it was either 2 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks, complete changes in the brain and then the body, like just the health, right? Like our body starts to heal. What are some other steps? So that's the first great one that I think that we are all aware of and kind of shifting towards. Are there other things that parents can be doing to protect their kids and their families?
Well, during the pandemic, there was a baby boom among unemployed hairdressers in New York City.
Oh.
And I asked the union worker, why is that? And she told me, she said, well, all of a sudden, none of us were working. We were no longer being exposed to all these toxic chemicals at the salon.
Ah.
And consequently, we could all have the kids we had always wanted.
Wow.
So another big area of concern, as I point out in Raising Healthy Kids, are your cosmetics and personal care products. And here, they really don't tell you what's inside them. But when we test products, like one of my kids brought home a cologne called English Leather, which he wanted to wear, being a teenager and stuff. And it was just loaded with a chemical called phthalate. And these are little plasticizers that are used in the cosmetic industry to impart texture to cosmetics, hold in fragrances, and they're never listed on the label. And I share with you brands that are not going to be using them and brands that do in Raising Healthy Kids, and also what to look for on a label so you can avoid them. And it's really important because researchers have found when mom is using these cosmetics with phthalates during pregnancy, and they cross the placenta to the embryo or the fetus, moms with high everyday levels, not high exorbitant levels, just when in a population, there's always going to be the least exposed and the most exposed. That's normal. So these are high normal exposures. Those kids lost up to 7 points in their IQ. They were more likely to be born with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Their gender behavior was modified more towards the feminine. They would grow up at greater risk for reproductive cancers, male or female, and infertility. And that's because phthalates imitate the sex hormone estrogen once they're in the human body. They're very toxic. And what they do is they latch on to the cell receptors on our sex organs. Now, these cell receptors would normally take up internally produced natural forms of estrogen. But instead, they're being overwhelmed by these synthetic little estrogens that are coming in through the skin as we absorb them from using our cosmetics or personal care products. And when they latch onto the cell receptors, they're like a virus. All of a sudden, the body starts to produce unhealthy forms of estrogen. There are different kinds of estrogen the body can form. Some are very toxic and some are not toxic. The least toxic break down easily and they're not that potent. They just do their job and go away. The really toxic ones are durable, last, and very potent. Or they interfere with the body's production of testosterone and rob boys of testosterone, which accounts for the modified gender behavior towards the feminine. And so they're robbing our children. And this is happening to the entire US population and every population, Canada, Europe. They're appearing in cosmetics throughout the world. But as I've said before, I think Americans are by far the biggest consumer society and probably the most over-plasticized population. So cosmetics are huge. And of course, I don't want people to feel like, okay, what can I do about it? Nothing. No, there's a lot you can do about it. It's like reading Raising Healthy Kids is like taking an online course for an hour on cosmetics. Once you read the chapter, you will be so well equipped because you'll learn, if it contains fragrance, for example, I don't want that product because fragrance often needs phthalate. Or say, you have kids or you yourself want to have kids and you're using fragrances, perfumes. These are so bad to use during pregnancy and before pregnancy. Really, really bad things because they're loaded with phthalates. You're going to hurt your kids. So if you're using a lot of makeup during pregnancy, mom, it's really, really not smart. It's just not smart. Because the makeup will have phthalates and other kinds of estrogenizing chemicals in it. But there's a way out. I share with you what to look for, like I said, what ingredients, how to find a safe sunscreen, because right now it's summertime and we're slathering on chemical sunscreens. But all those sunscreens have these estrogenic chemicals too. In fact, the US Food and Drug Administration reviewed, I think there are like 16 approved chemicals and found 14 of them were too dangerous to be used, but allowed 12 of them to be used, recommended against 2, and said 2 were safe. Wow. But if you have a child and you're putting on these sunscreens, and they're 1 or 2 years old, or even older, they're interfering with the baby's neurological development too, because I mentioned they act like estrogen. And we think of the genitalia when we think of estrogen and genitalia development. But the other big sex organ in the human body is the human brain. And it's completely dependent on the sex hormones to develop properly into the male or female direction. But if we're slathering on sunscreen, chemical sunscreens on our children, we're really robbing them of their hormones and their ability to fully develop into who they were meant to be. And that's happening. That's the thing. It's really happening throughout society. If you wonder why, for example, we're slightly more dysfunctional now, why people in some areas of the world, and particularly in the United States, are thinking more as authoritarians rather than conservatives, it's because authoritarianism is easier to assimilate when you have a lower IQ.
Yeah.
This is happening. And it only takes a small percentage change to have big effects on society.
Yeah.
So cosmetics, mom and dad, read that chapter in the book. It really, before you have your kids, when you have your kids, and after you have your kids, it's that important to your health.
For sure. And I imagine too, my grandpa's partner passed away a couple years ago, and she was diagnosed with dementia, and he is convinced it is from the chemicals, cleaning chemicals. So I'm sure like it affects, developing brains, but it also affects us later on in life too. And I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because as we get older, we again have a greater vulnerability just to chemical exposures. We're kind of, in some ways, our bodies become more like babies again. I think they become more sensitive to chemicals, and also it just builds up over time. The damaging effects. So we're going to find. I wrote the book Raising Healthy Kids, but really it's for all adults. And mom and dad, in many ways, you have to be healthy for your kids to be healthy, because there's so much nature nurture in living. Who we are as parents profoundly shapes our kids. We don't change them, we just shape them a little. And who we are and what we do is, if like, for example, if we carelessly have a lawn care company that's using 2,4-D or other chemicals to keep our lawn, think of what we're doing to our kids' health in the long run, to their ability to have kids, or even not develop a cancer like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Plus, while we're talking about lawn care chemicals, which are another big area that I would say that I deal with in the book, how to find safe lawn care chemicals. But, your canine pets are also at risk for cancer, because when they play on a lawn that's sprayed with a weed killer like 2,4-D, their risk goes up too.
Yeah.
So it's really nature nurture. Mom and dad, what you do is so important, not just for your children, but for your own health. And it goes back and forth in a loop, feedback loop.
Is it possible to have like a completely toxic free environment? Is that
no?
Okay.
No way. And you can't go for perfection. You just go for big, significant reductions, and you want to avoid big mistakes. Just for example, the chemical glyphosate, Roundup, there are lots of news reports about it showing up everywhere. And it pretty much is. We're not going to be able to always escape it. But by going organic, as I mentioned earlier, for example, you're going to vastly reduce your exposure.
Right.
And that's what you want, is just to get these big, significant reductions, and not to make big mistakes too. I'll just give you an example of what I mean by mistakes that you go, oh man, I wish I had known that. I just wish. This is a story that I share about sending your kids off to school, whether it's preschool, elementary school, or college even. In this case, a family in the northeastern United States sent their kids to a preschool that was on an old Air Force base. And unbeknownst to them, the well that supplied the water to the preschool had these forever chemicals called PFAS, which are in the water now because of their use for firefighting equipment and stain and water-resistant manufacturing. But they didn't discover that until about a year, 6 months, or a year, maybe 2 years later. And by the time they had their children's blood levels measured, they were astronomical. The parent didn't have those high levels because they never went to the preschool. They dropped the kids off. So you can imagine the kind of survivor guilt that you suffer. So when I say don't make big mistakes, one of the things I do in raising healthy kids is I point out these really, what in retrospect would be very obvious things to do if you knew, but since you don't know to do them. No one thinks about checking the water of their child's school before their child attends, or maybe giving them a stainless steel flask to bring their own water to school because it's safer. But school can be very dangerous for your child. So I'm just saying there are big things you need to know that if you don't, you're going to slap yourself and say, oh man, I wish I had known. That's what I'm trying to do, is just save you from mistakes that either I have made or other parents have made. Not because they're bad parents, because as I said, we're all learning this together. And there are things I know that I'm trying to pass on in my new book.
Well, I look forward to reading it. And yeah, I think a lot of listeners will be encouraged to read it as well. So going organic, just before we wrap up, are there any big brands that you can think of that are safe that you would recommend, listeners to maybe watch out for?
Oh yeah, let me give you some favorites of mine. And we were talking about cleaning products, and this is um, a good story. There's a company called Ecos, ECOS, and they were the first company to never use dyes or anything. Plus, if you look at all their packaging, it's transparent. They don't even use dyes in their packaging. So I've been working with Ecos in what is known as Cancer Alley, Louisiana. And this is on the Gulf Coast of the United States. And it's the stretch of our Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. It's about 85 miles with something like 150 to 200 chemical plants.
Wow.
And it's a horrible thing happening there because most of the folks there are Black, and that's why all these plants are being put there. And it's really turning out to be kind of a genocide on them. One of the plants is called and this is for everyone to listen here. One of the plants is called Danka Plastics, Danka DuPont. That's the only plant in the United States that produces neoprene. So when listeners are buying those little koozies to keep their stuff cool or beach totes, please don't buy that neoprene anymore. This is the power of the consumer. Because right next to that plant, long before the plant was ever there, is a school called the Fifth Ward Elementary School, where kids are going to school and breathing levels of a chemical called chloroprene, often 70 times above the what's so-called safe limit, and there is no safe exposure. Ecos and the nonprofit group that I work for, Healthy Living Foundation, and several nonprofits in the area, we brought in 32 high-efficiency particulate air filters for every classroom at that school. And that's one of the things you learn to do from reading Raising Healthy Kids is how do I protect my kids in a polluted area? That air that they will breathe indoors with their HEPA filters will be the cleanest air they breathe all day. And again, these particulates rob them of their IQ. It's been shown over and over again. Kids who breathe polluted air have more behavioral issues and lower IQ. So Ecos and the Healthy Living Foundation have worked together to help the kids at the Fifth Ward Elementary School. And so if you're asking about a great brand, I really recommend Ecos cleaning products, not just because of their works, their good deeds, but they're probably the cleanest manufactured cleaning product today. So Ecos is great. Dr. Bronner is another great brand. Like if you're looking for a good liquid soap, they're very scrupulous. That's a good name. And in the book, I share many other great brands. They're not perfect, but they're so much better than what else is out there. And they're so much better for you, your family, and your community.
I think Ecos, if it is the same one, they do makeup brushes. My makeup brushes is by a company, Ecos, and they're like organic. And so I don't know if it is the same company, but I think it might be. So Well, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much to think about, but still so much to learn as well. This is just scratching the surface, but it's planting seeds anyways for people to start thinking about some of these things. And it really does make a difference. So, and Andrew, I don't know if you have any last minute questions or comments. It sounded like maybe you did earlier.
Yeah, it was just about the Roundup thing. There was one thing that kind of touched on, because that was one of the ones that they actually outlawed in Alberta years ago.
Yeah.
5-6 years ago, they mandated that it had to come off the shelves, and you can't find it anymore. So I think it just speaks to the both the legislative power, if given time, but mainly the consumer push that you were referring to earlier, right? You can vote with your spending dollars on what you feel needs to be on the shelf and not, and then hopefully the government will catch up accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
We hope the government catches up, but we really can't wait, because it often takes as so long for them to really catch up to what's going on the ground. But that's great. That's great. The glyphosate or Roundup has that ban. Here in the U.S., it's a free for all.
Yeah.
It's a total free for all. That's why.
Oh, and people were upset. Like when it was being announced that it was coming off the shelves, people got upset because I think to the other point you made is they didn't have the educated understanding of what other options were out there that were safe, or the reasons that it was something that needed to go out. But at the end of the day, once it's gone, it's life moves on and you have other options. It's just making sure you know what options are better.
Well, I was surprised when you mentioned Roundup, because I was thinking, like, isn't that banned a long time ago? But clearly not everywhere. So, yeah. Still lots of steps to take, really, for all of us.
Yeah.
I think we take baby steps. Well, thank you so much. I will put your book in the show notes and all of your contact information, social media handles. But for now, people who are listening, where is the very best place for them to reach out if they wanted to?
Oh, please visit raisinghealthykidsthebook.com, and you can subscribe to my newsletter there and read some of the articles that I've written about working in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, and get healthy shopping tips about sushi or whatever you're shopping for. And raisinghealthykidsthebook.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you all.